Well guys, did you hear about Timmy the whale yet? See, he's been on every news ticker in Germany for the past month, live drone feed from the Baltic, heart emoji vigils, talk shows asking experts how Timmy is doing. I'll tell you how Timmy's doing. Timmy's dying because he's stranded. He's essentially in palliative care now, which means we sprinkle water on him until he runs out, and the entire country's watching and spurging out, especially the boomers. If you're not German, don't worry, you've had your own Timmy. Just think of him like a version of Harambe for TV-addicted boomers. While Timmy was lighting up every news cycle in Germany, the federal crime statistics dropped. Sexual assaults up 8.5%, murders up by 6%, as well as 29,000 knife attacks, which means 80 a day. That's more than 3 per hour. That also got covered, but just not in the same way. Naturally, it was lodged in between 2 Timmy updates. A female celebrity finds out her husband is making erotic phone calls impersonating her with other men. And we talk about virtual violence for a whole news cycle because it's convenient. Meanwhile, actual rape has increased by 71% since 2017. Of course, that is the fault of men. But don't you dare ask what kind of men. All across the West, we see a similar shape. Violent crime is up, public anxiety blunted by a permanent low-grade panic about whatever is photogenic at the time. Be it a whale, a celebrity, a court case, anything really that isn't the actual problem. This way we get a country, or rather a civilization, whose next generation is the first one in living memory looking at worse prospects than its parents. And the official response is together, in solemn awe, around a dying whale, in mourning and emotional outbursts, while the heritage that you leave behind is more abominable than anything you dare to imagine. If that isn't a perfect symbol of our civilizational decline and the reasons for it, well, then I don't know what is. It begs the question, what is one even supposed to do with such a symbol?
It's beautiful up here.
I couldn't ask for a better stage.
I don't see any instruments.
God, I fucking hate woman. It is to Madame Justice that I dedicate this concerto today, in honor of the holiday that she seems to have taken from these parts, and in recognition of the imposter that stands in her stead. Tell me, do you know what date it is?
November the 4th.
What? It's April, whatever. Remember, remember, the whale on the beach, the live stream, the candles, the public donation command. I know of no reason why the treason of the whale, distraction, should ever be forgot. First, the screamers. Ah, yes. Listen carefully, can you hear them? And now, the slurs.
I can hear it. How did you do that?
Wait, here comes the crescendo.
It would appear that something is mighty wrong with the young people nowadays, isn't it? You can feel it before you can name it. They're soft in the wrong places and brittle everywhere else. They move through the world like they're already apologizing for being there. They sit too still, or they can't keep their ass on the chair for 5 minutes. And whichever one it is, some adult already has a name for it and a diagnosis in hand. But actually asking what's wrong in earnest, that is something that we don't really do, honestly. But we will do so today. We must, in fact. The boys grew up in a house without a father. Of course, not literally. A lot of them have fathers. Working fathers, loving fathers, dads who show up. That's not directly the problem. It is rather the missing archetype. Even the decent fathers out there are trying to father inside of a culture that has systemically gutted what fathering is even for. The archetype itself is missing, and when it is missing, the function rots inside of the men that are still trying to perform it. Fathering isn't just being present. Fathering is the imposition of healthy boundaries. It's drawing a line that the boy can push against, that he will eventually cross. And once he does, comes back from a little bit more complete. The father states clearly, this far and no further, so that the son can test himself against something that will not give. Without this line in the sand, the boy doesn't grow up, he disperses. Just take a look at what we have turned into pathologies in the last 30 years alone. Aggression. Boys are allowed to cry now, but anger, that's a little harder to metabolize, isn't it? Discipline, loyalty, physicality, grace and force, every single one of these are qualities that healthy boys develop on their own and that the father is supposed to recognize and refine. Yet they have been recoded as a problem, or as toxic in some cases, something to be medicated, counseled, sensitized, diversity trained, or if none of those stick, simply shamed out of the kid before he turns 12. Then we wonder. We get a generation growing up spiritually fatherless, low self-esteem, no trust in their own instincts, half present in their own bodies, and angry, but not outwardly. Instead, the anger simmers within. You cannot suppress the masculine without it becoming toxic, and without any of the old ventilation channels for this feeling, no woods, no warband, no right, no enemies, this anger just sits there, slowly fermenting into resentment that is not fully understood by the person feeling it, and around age 11, he discovers the internet. See, the father archetype that I've covered in detail in the series of the same name, his position is not necessarily vacant. He has instead been replaced. What rules in his place is a pathological version of it, and at least in regards to what we will be talking about today, it is most accurately represented by Saturn. He will definitely get his own video eventually. That one's going to be a little bit schizoid, but not like that's a bad thing. Now, Kronos to the Greeks and Saturn to the Romans, he is the god of time, of limit, of measure, and most importantly for today, of purpose. He is famously known for eating his own children, so they don't take his place. The whole modern society runs on his image. Everything has to have a purpose. Every hour has to be billable somewhere. Your career, a platform, a brand. Your hobby should make your money one day. Your friends should be a network. Your body should be optimized, your sleep should be tracked, and your attention is and should be captured, measured, and sold. Under Saturn's tyranny, the thing a child does by default, doing something because it's fun, the romantic in the classical sense, not the Kuma sense in the way that Marcuse, for example, would have understood it. All of that has become suspicious, almost criminal, actually, in some places, literally criminal. You're not supposed to wander. You're supposed to fill out your resume. You're not supposed to fistfight your friends in a field over something that needs sorting out. You're supposed to go to therapy. Of course, only so that you can function again, but not actually talk about what's wrong. Because the point isn't to get better, the point is that you can go back to work. This entire construction is the maw of Saturn closing around us. The world has been arranged so that unstructured play, the romantic, has nowhere left to happen. Every surface is surveilled, in case it's too dangerous. Every action is either productive or suspicious. There is no third option anymore. Saturn alone doesn't really catch all of us though. Pure tyranny alone would breed rebels. And rebels are exactly what the system cannot tolerate. Saturn has a consort at his side. Her job is to catch what slips past him. She is in essence the chaotic feminine of modernity. The other side of the toxic coin. She is the endless allure, the dopamine drip, the algorithm that knows exactly which girl, which outrage, which little hit of validation to slide under your nose next. She is the devouring mother, who never asks anything of you, who lets you rot in bed at 28, 3 weeks deep into a parasocial crush on a girl whose attention is currently being shared by 10,000 other guys at the same time. Saturn dictates, be useful or be nothing. She instead lures you in. Stop trying so hard. Come here, it's gonna be okay. She is quite literally the non-alternative to him. Between the two of them, there is no path to adulthood. You're either the slave, grinding for a future that never arrives, or you're the pleasure junkie, narcotized on content, porn, delivery food, and the slow blue light of the screen, at 2 a.m. Almost everyone I know, including the ones working really hard trying not to be like this, are somewhere on this axis. Maybe not at either extreme, but well within the structure. And then a few well-paid people sit on a panel somewhere and have a serious chat about all of that. The youth, what's to be done? Age verification, screen time limits, blah blah blah. What gets missed is that this isn't a bug of the system, it is instead a feature. It is the system functioning exactly as intended. See, the wealth and the position of the established, the very people on that panel, they don't really want to transfer that, so the children are not allowed to grow up into honorable heirs. It is as simple as that. And the institutions that shaped us as kids, or rather should have shaped us, are saturated with this pattern. School, the pediatrician, the school counselor, the HR department, family services, all of them are built by Saturn. All of it are likewise staffed by his civil servants, and many of those civil servants are decent, well-intentioned people who have no idea what machine they are actually a part of. We were never meant to come out of this as sovereign men and women. We were meant to come out of it as something consumable. But to understand what we have lost, we have to understand what we had. And what we had wasn't an accident. Every serious culture in the Indo-European orbit, and well beyond, had independently developed the same system, for one and the same job, taking a child and making a man or a woman out of it. Not in the postmodern sense. This ran on rituals, most of them very brutal and strange. But they were necessary, because nothing on Earth is more dangerous than a horde of unfinished young men, which, by the way, should really give us something to think about. Anyway, let's start with the girls, shall we? Because we haven't completely shat the bed there yet. See, in ancient Greece, at Brauron, for example, young women on the threshold of marriage were sent to the sanctuary of Artemis, goddess of the hunt. There, for one night, they became bears. They put on bear hides and danced. They left the city and civilization to embody the wild. Why would they do that? Because a girl about to become a woman has to meet the beast, not become it forever, not like, you know, some hyper-hysterical Karen. You know what I mean. But instead to know about it, to carry it for the rest of her life, the memory of what's out there beyond the wall. A woman who has never looked at the beast cannot be truly tender. Her kindness is naive and not chosen. Her romantic connection to the world is brittle because she doesn't know what her tenderness stands against. The young man on the other side had a mirror practice across the entire Indo-European world, Greeks, Germans, Celts, Indo-Iranians even. Young men at the threshold of adulthood would leave civilization. For years, they formed war bands, they put on the wolfskin and lived on the edge of civilization. They raided, hunted and tested themselves against each other. By the way, that is probably where the werewolf myth comes from. This is often described as the Choreos ritual, the wolf band, the Männerbund, in its original pre-political developmental form. Tacitus recorded one such thing. He describes the Hari, a tribe that painted themselves black and attacked at night. An army of shadows, he writes, trained enemies fled from the field. That's the wildness of that idea frozen in Roman ethnography, grown out of German soil. But it's not too unique. Rome's own founding myth tells us the same thing. Romulus and Remus, suckled by a wolf, Roman standards carried by men in animal pelts, the Ulfhetnar of the Edda, the wolf and bear warriors who went into trance and became animals before going into battle. It is the wild hunt riding through the autumn storms. It's all one thing. It's the ancient grammar of male maturation, and it was alive just a few centuries ago. A woman meets the beast to know what her tenderness is protecting her from. A man becomes the beast to learn what his ferocity must not devour. You don't really understand restraint until you have felt a thing inside you that needs restraining, and you don't know your own strength until you've used it against something and seen what it does. Both of these sides produce integration. The girl keeps her tenderness, but now it's informed, chosen, sovereign. The boy keeps his ferocity, but now it's directed, aimed, and loyal. And on the other side, back in civilization they meet again, as whole people, because only the whole can voluntarily commit to one another, because only the whole have anything to offer. And yes, I'm pretty aware that this will probably trigger some of the average room temperature IQ social science majors, but boys and girls require different initiations in different environments at different ages, under different teachers. This is very obvious to anyone who has ever been one of either. But we have built an education system that denies this from the foundation up. Same building, same curriculum, same age cohorts, and the same teachers, who, even if they're great at their job, can only really understand half of their students. And so we must produce socially deformed psyches on both sides of the aisle. Boys medicated for the crime of being boys, girls encouraged to suppress exactly the qualities that they will desperately need by the time they're 28. Both of them shipped into adulthood raw, unfinished, and spending their 20s frantically trying to put themselves together. 30. For most modern people, is the age at which they finally stop being broken children, or, well, remain one forever. This begs the question, where is the rooftop where the girls dance into womanhood? Where does the warband happen today? It doesn't happen. The space for it has been abolished. The single most important tool of this abolition is the thing in your pocket, the smartphone. In a very meaningful sense is Saturn's eye. It is potentially always on. Always recording, always archiving. The old rituals, on the other hand, had one non-negotiable feature. Whatever happened in the ritual stayed in the ritual. The boys in the woods were held by the woods. The girls at Browan were held by Artemis. Whatever weird thing happened, and I'm very sure a lot of weird things happened, got metabolized into the myth, into a shared memory, into the scar tissue of becoming an adult. But it did not follow you home. Now, on the other hand, every embarrassment is forever. Every experiment is a potential clip. You can't afford to be stupid, because now your stupidity might last forever. You can't afford to be ugly in public, because someone might film you. You can't afford to lose a fight, cry in the wrong place, or, God forbid, get drunk and give your take on migration. Everything we do is an audition for a future employer, a future girlfriend, a future prosecutor, who hopefully has not seen the group chat. We are now surveilled by strangers, and strangers are merciless. There is no in-between state anymore, no unseen space between the things, and it's exactly in that in-between that growing up is supposed to happen. The second mechanism alongside the phone is the purpose drive. That one's a bit more complex. See, under Saturn's reign, anything that can't justify itself in the terms of a career, capital, or status becomes suspicious, which means romantic searching, trying out who you might be for no reason, becomes deviant. A 14-year-old in a band that's never going anywhere is wasting his time. A 17-year-old who walks 10 miles to think is daydreaming. A 22-year-old who reads Nietzsche instead of learning Python is a failure. And if he does both, he's a radical. The categories, because it's beautiful and because I wanted to, have been interpreted out of existence. Maybe not in theory, but definitely in function. And on the other side of this coin, the fetishization of the feminine closes the last exit. Here we should really slow down for a second, because the female degeneration is, in some ways, more pronounced in the English-speaking world than anywhere else. It's the leading edge of where all of this goes. Women are encouraged to release everything they think. Every emotion has to be broadcasted. Every mood is monetizable. Every boundary is performative. The main character filter, the let me be honest with you guys for a second, 30-second confessional, and the spicy creator pivot at 23 or at 18 if you're really fucking degenerate. The therapy language as flirtation. The I just hold a lot of trauma as a personality, and the men are intimidated by my energy cope. All of it is the entire register of what was once private, sacred, or simply yours is now being turned into content. When you synthesize this with Saturn's purpose drive, you get something that doesn't have a clean name in older languages, but I guess it's emotional prostitution. Everything is performative, nothing is given. Everything is more or less treated as a transaction in the currency of attention, and the women performing it are their own victims because they have been denied the encounter with danger that would have allowed them to draw a real boundary. And likewise, the violation of a boundary cannot be named. They get hurt over and over again, and they can't really say what hurt them. Was it the guy they let in too fast? Was it the pictures of herself that she sells? Was it the dad who never said no to her? Was it the platform whose business model is harvesting attention like topsoil? They don't know. The diagnostic vocabulary has been stripped from them, so they post about it. Just take a look at the OnlyFans pipeline. At the rate at which young women in the Anglosphere are processing themselves into product before 25. Look at the entire creator economy as a soft sex industry with better lighting. We are watching, in real time, the wholesale conversion of female interiority into a market, and the market is run by Saturn. Here I want to pivot for a moment because a lot of these people believe that their expression, or the freedom of it, is a tool to fight tyranny. But all of this really does show us that we do not live, in fact, in a free society. See, our collective media is maximally transgressive. Our music is vulgar, our films are gore-soaked, our porn is on every device that every 10-year-old owns, and believe me, I'm not prudish, but it's worth noticing. The transgression is the water that we swim in, on the consumption level at least. The moment an individual attempts an actual embodied personal transgression, however, so says the wrong word, makes the wrong joke, and refuses the mandatory training, then the full weight of the system comes crashing down. In the UK, they'll arrest a guy for a spicy tweet. In Germany, they'll raid a pensioner's house at 6 in the morning because he called the economy minister an idiot. Meanwhile, our media delivers completely unhinged products, let alone the state-funded broadcasts, in which the indigenous population of the countries is regularly humiliated, mocked, and vulgarity is the standard. In Germany, for example, I get state-funded comedians singing about how the state can lick their pussies, financed by my own taxpayer money, while people get sued for holding signs that tell the chancellor to lick their balls. At the same time, I turn on the state-founded online program addressed at children and the youth, and I get guides on what objects I can shove up my ass. But if I were to comment that the people that make these kind of videos can shove their guidelines up their ass, well then that's criminal. It makes perfect sense, guys, just don't question it. And yes, by the way, they affirm that you can shove the hammer up your ass. But if I say something off about a politician, that is unacceptable. And in order to save our democracy, I need my house raided. The collective performs transgression all the time. The individual is forbidden from it. Some retard midwit will probably tell me that that's a crazy contradiction, but it actually isn't. It came out this way because it's useful. Collective transgression binds you to the prevailing value system. It's the spectacle that's being fed to you. Stepping out of line interrupts this process. The same can be seen in politics. Real change from inside the structure appears. What a coincidence to be impossible. Just take a look at Trump and how the MAGA movement got captured by neocons and other interest groups. Elections come and elections go. The machine grinds on. Which, quite frankly, is what you'd expect because that's what it's supposed to do. The boy raised in all of this is, by 15, in a trap. He can't be initiated because there's no real place in which initiation is allowed. Likewise, he also can't rebel against the system because the rebel has no ground to stand on and likely no spine for it either. He can't become a man because manhood requires behavior that's been pathologized, like, say, aggression in his own interest. But he also can't stay a boy forever. Well, at least his body won't allow it. So he becomes the eternal child, waiting to be devoured by the tyrant or rocked to sleep by the harlot. The only way out of this is to live so authentically, so weirdly, that the father finds you indigestible, and to refuse the numbing embrace of the mother at the same time. Is that the final answer? I don't know, but it looks like it's the only answer we have left. The path that we take leads us to a very specific place, a digital one, including in some sense to this very video. But what I'm really talking about is 4chan, the Call of Duty lobby from 2012, the 9-man group chat of guys who've known each other since middle school, the anonymous image board, the Discord voice channel at 3 AM. These are modern wolf dens, at least structurally. These are pretty much the last places in the modern West where the curious dynamic can still half function. They run on the very same logic, but they also do fail for the same reasons that any half-assed ritual fails. But they are the only thing left, and so we have to take them seriously. The defining feature of these spaces is the anonymity. You're not Tim from accounting. You're not your LinkedIn profile, thank God. You're a handle, a persona, a voice without a face. That is the modern transformation. It is putting on the wolfskin of modernity. In here, you become someone who isn't quite bound to your daytime identity. You can do and say things that you would, of course, never do at work, at home, in public, because the person doing them, in a meaningful sense, isn't really you. That's exactly what the wolfskin did for the boy in antiquity. It wasn't a costume. It was a legal, spiritual, and psychological identity swap. The boy who hunted in the wolf band was not the same man who later sat in the assembly. The ritual required this distinction. The modern wolf's den, with all its lovable garbage and all its degeneracy, reproduces this exact basic structure. Its clearest filter is the Turing test of the slur. It doesn't only work on AI agents, it also works on humans. Anyone who adheres to their programming cannot no matter what, perform the N-word. The F-word. People who've never been in one of these spaces don't really understand what the offensive jokes are for. They think the offensiveness is the point, that is why you make yourself anonymous. But of course it isn't. The offensiveness is the filter. Men everywhere, in every culture on Earth, socialized through mutual prodding. You poke the other guy, you make the joke that goes a little bit too far, and then you watch what he does. If he gets offended and all sad, well, you know one thing about him. If he chimps the fuck out, well, you know another. But if he laughs back and counters, you know he is one of us. This isn't a toxic bug of male friendship. It's the mechanism of male friendships. It is how men measure tolerance for boundary infringement in proportion to the trust on offer. If I can't trust you with a joke, how am I supposed to know you'll carry me home to my family when shit starts hitting the fan? This is why cops and soldiers, for example, have the darkest humor on Earth. It is why firefighters, paramedics, ER nurses, war veterans, all of them, say things in private that would end a civilian's career. Of course, part of it is coping, but the bigger part is testing. You are being sounded. You are being asked, in a language older than any HR office, whether or not you're actually one of us, or if you're going to fold the second something real happens. The online den does the same thing, slightly degraded. The slurs, the career-ending jokes, the willingness to step over the line, that is the tolerance test. The new fag folds, the one who stays and can swing back, he's in. The offensiveness isn't the product, it's the gate, and nowhere has that been mechanically cleaner than on the original 4chan, or its German cousin, Program. For years it was invite only, where existing users had to spend their own hard-earned reputation in real currency to vouch for a new entrant. If the new guy turned out to be a normie, a tourist, or a snitch, that fell back on the inviter. That's of course not accidental, but rather the exact mechanical translation of how the ancient warband functioned. Indeed, the Männerbund functioned in this way. You didn't get in just because you were old enough. You got in because someone who was already in vouches for you. And naturally the one who vouches, he risks with you. This is what membership actually means in the original honorable form, encoded in an image board by programmers and weirdos who almost certainly had no idea they were rebuilding a 1,000-year-old social structure. But once you're through the gate, something important starts to happen. See, shared transgression binds you. There is a simple evolutionary logic to all of that. If we have both done something that the outside world would punish us for, neither of us can easily betray the other, because the betrayer implicates himself. We are welded to each other by the shared fact of having crossed the line together. This is, by the way, the very same exact mechanism that genuinely dark operations have always exploited. Epstein is the textbook example of that. The reason his network is so very hard to crack is not necessarily some grand mastermind conspiracy. Rather, every person inside it had done something that made defection impossible. See, if we, I don't know, ate a person together, we can also keep a secret. That's just how human bonding works. Used for bad intentions, of course. But it is also the very same mechanism between 9 guys in the group chat who have been roasting each other for 10 years. Yet it produces something a little bit different. It produces brotherhood. Likely you've seen this meme float around. The guy that you have called every slur in the book is the guy who will miss you years after you're gone, while your newer, more respectable friends quietly moved on. It is the feeling that you get when you look at your Steam friends list and there's a few guys in there with more than 10 years of absence. It is the oldest male bond that we know of, reasserting itself through the cracks of a sanitized culture that tried to abolish it. But that is only reasonable. These bonds reject every form of structure. No organization issued them, no institution has blessed them. They exist outside the daytime order, and they are often the only thing keeping a certain kind of young man tethered. A quick aside on what we lost not so long ago. Within living memory, male daytime life had an infrastructure: bowling leagues, volunteer fire departments, lodges, veterans halls, the Elks, the Rotary, the Knights of Columbus, men's clubs in every neighborhood, pubs you went to every Tuesday for 40 years. In Germany, we had shooting clubs, gymnastic clubs, choirs, gardening associations, where men sat on Saturday afternoons drinking beer and arguing about plum trees. Daylight spaces where male intimacy was legitimate, where men sang together, shot together, drank together, and buried each other. All of this is dying out, fast. The Elks are evaporating, American Legion halls are closing, volunteer fire departments are folding because no one shows up, the country pub is being replaced by the chain restaurant. The last serious Western youth movements that took being a boy outdoors seriously, and there were several on both sides of the Atlantic, were crushed by the 20th century and never really came back. The daytime infrastructure of male brotherhood has collapsed, and what is left are the dens at night. The boys know it, they just can't talk about it. This brings us to a remarkable fact. What I'm describing here, the honor of the night, the glory of what's forbidden in daylight, the brotherhood forged in an act civilized society would condemn, is one of the oldest themes in Western literature. And the most beautiful example of it comes from a source that is so canonical and old that even the most squeamish academics cannot really dismiss it. I'm talking about the Iliad, to be more precise, Book 10 of the Iliad. It is called the Doloneia. It is named after a minor Trojan called Dolon. It's the night episode. Most of the poem happens in daylight, on the plain of Troy, in the full glare of the sun and the light of heroic visibility. Glory in the Iliad mostly means being seen, by the gods, by the enemy, and by the poets. To have kleos is to be witnessed and remembered. It is the aura-mixing of antiquity. The Iliad is, basically, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, but for white people. Book 10 is different, however. Odysseus and Diomedes, the original giga-chads of the West, leave the Greek camp at night. They go on a mission, but they're not going to fight a battle. They're going to creep through enemy territory, gather intelligence, kill if they can do it quietly, and come back. Homer describes them putting on animal hides, and because of course these are our heroes, they can't be ordinary animals. Diomedes wears a lion's pelt and helmet. Odysseus wears a boar tusk helmet. They cease, for that night, to be the daylight heroes of the epic, and become something else. At the very same time, on the other side of the conflict, the young Trojan named Dolon volunteers for a similar mission. Homer's description of Dolon is, well, a little special. He is covered in the skin of a grey wolf and a weasel skin cap. He runs low. He, in his way, also puts on the hide. But Homer the author mocks him. Dolon is ugly, cowardly, greedy. He runs in a weaselly way. Try not to commit a hate crime impossible challenge. Diomedes and Odysseus catch him. They interrogate him, and he begs for his life. He gives up the Trojan positions, and naturally Diomedes cuts off his head while he's still talking. Now, I'd like you to notice something here. The Greeks and Dolon are doing the exact same thing. They're all scouts at night in animal skins. By the daylight code of the Iliad, all three of them should be cowards. But what they're doing, sneaking, not announcing, not challenging, going for the back of the neck in the dark, would be dishonorable by the day. At night, there's a different glory to be had, a different arete, a kind of honor that belongs specifically to what is forbidden in sunlight. The Greeks, after they are finished with Dolon, massacre the sleeping Thracian king Rhesus and his men in their tents, as well as steal their horses. They do not challenge anyone directly. They leave like thieves in the night, and yet Athena is with them. She gives them signs, she watches, and blesses the mission. The goddess of the city, the goddess of wisdom, the daylight intellect of the Greek world, personally sanctions the night raid. That is of course not a contradiction in the text. It is the text teaching us something that we have, 3,000 years later, forgotten. There are two glories to be had. The glory of the day, where you stand visible on the plain and your name is shouted, and the glory of the night, where you move in the skin of the beast and the gods bless what you do, because the tribe cannot live alone on the daylight deeds. The city naturally needs Achilles, but it also needs its Odysseus in the wolfskin. The man who only knows to be seen is brutal, but the man who can also operate in the dark, who has put on the hide and has done the things that cannot be done in polite society, that is a different kind of guy. Now, let's be fair, is this a perfect analogy of a bunch of teenagers roasting each other on Call of Duty at 2 in the morning? Probably not. The stakes are much smaller. The beast is smaller, more chihuahua than wolf. Frankly, most of us are more Dolon than Odysseus or Diomedes. I'm not pretending that the average green text is on level with the Doloneia. But the structure is the same, the logic is the same, the human material being worked on is the same. Young men, in a night space under a shared hide, doing what the daylight forbids, forming bonds that the daytime order cannot produce, and finding in that a kind of glory that the daytime cannot give them. So the next time that someone tells you how terrible these spaces are, perverse, or uniquely poisonous to the male development, okay, well, let's be honest, they might not be entirely wrong. But now you also know that the foundation of our civilizational project would probably disagree. Athena, a woman nonetheless, the goddess of wisdom, strategy and craft, she would disagree. 3,000 years of the deepest, most beautiful poetic tradition on Earth would disagree. See, the mechanism isn't what is disgusting. What is disgusting is the civilization that tried to abolish it and then wonders why its boys are getting sick when they are not allowed to grow up anywhere. Now, I've spent the last 20 minutes plus defending this circumstance, but I'm not going to let you walk away with the idea that this is the answer. It really isn't. It's a symptom that became, out of necessity, a partial medicine. It keeps a certain kind of boy alive who would otherwise be dead, but it's not where he is supposed to be. The Choreos worked because it ended. The boys went into the woods and they became wolves, and then, at a certain age, they came back. They re-entered the city. They brought what they had learned in the woods and put it into the service of the city. The young brood became a citizen who understood what was beyond the walls. This experience was the entire point. A man who never returns is not a man in the making, he's a bandit, or in modern terms, a loser. But it is exactly here where modernity fails us. There is no return. The digital wood has no formal exit anymore. Nick Fuentes is a great example. The return from transgression has become so impossible that entire parallel ecosystems form alongside public discourse. It is the very same anonymity that lets you shitpost at 14 that also lets you remain 14 forever. The persona meant to be a passage has become a cage. You're not transformed by the ritual, you are costumed indefinitely. Naturally, the most grotesque example of what happens when the transformation gets stuck is the furry. Someone who literally puts on the animal skin but never comes back. Instead, he's built a condo inside the roleplay, decorated it, started paying rent, and is now fully committed to the act. And because the modern feminine-dominated order cannot really metabolize the actual dangerous beast, well, the beast has to be defanged, softened, hypersexualized and made cute, turned into something that can be consumed. It's not enough to be just any animal. No, you have to have over-sexualized features to the point that an entire fucking vocabulary exists to describe what these people are doing with each other. It's the very same thing for the bronies, the same thing with the Sonic superfans, and of course the same with the entire pipeline of men who wander into these spaces, get caught by the Pleasure Island version of the feminine, and never come out. Some of them are the porn addicted, others come out the other end, not as men but as hyper-fetishized female caricatures. Finsta, for instance, will tell us it's all just ironic, guys, it's just a joke. Well, until it isn't, until it's a lifestyle, until it's an OnlyFans career. We all know which pipeline I'm talking about. This is Pleasure Island from Pinocchio. Well, or depending on your age, from Jordan Peterson. These people are not really turning into donkeys naturally. It's not really a transformation at all. It is the refusal to be transformed. The refusal to meet the world and become someone in it. It is what happens when the Choreos ritual is colonized by the devouring mother. And the boys never age. This is Saturn's consort, if you remember. These spaces aren't supposed to be a home. These places are, at their best, in their authentic form, supposed to be a threshold. The problem is, currently, nobody alive in the modern West can tell us really how to cross it. There is no village of elders waiting on the other side to receive the returning wolves. There's no role being held for the rebels. There is only Saturn's maw waiting to sell you to the Sigma male grind set, and by his side his consort waiting to sell you her OnlyFans subscription. The ritual is broken. You can get in, but we can never get out. Thus, it looks like we'll have to build it ourselves, don't we? Which is what next episode is going to be about. A lot of conservative commentators, especially in the Anglosphere, will try to sell you some institutionalized way out. Go to church, get married, have kids, vote correctly. But the reality is, we cannot go back. The initiation rites are gone, the lodges are gone, the clubs are gone, the elders are gone. The warband exists only in mutilated form, if at all, and entirely cut off from the world. On servers, in lobbies, in group chats, you could even say here, in this video. If we stay there, however, we become stuck. If we leave without ever having been there, we don't grow up either. It would appear that the only way out is to become something that neither Saturn nor his consort can metabolize. Every grind, every optimization, every hustle, every credential, every career, that is him chewing you out. The mother devours her children by lulling them in. Every scroll, every porn tab, every delivery order, every parasocial bond, that is the lulling in. Both eat us alive, just at different speeds. The son who escapes is the one who is indigestible to Saturn, but refuses the numbing embrace of the mother. He works, but not for them. He enjoys, but not from her. He's tender and dangerous, elegant and forceful, kind in order to be strong. He is, in the old language, noble, not because of his blood, but because of his bearing. You may remember when we talked about the Greek heroes, I used a certain word there, arete. From it comes the word aristos, from which comes the aristocracy. It is that idea, the aristos, that emerges in a man who has walked the path and walked back. That is what the next episode is about, how we walk back, how to build the return when no one is waiting at the other end. For now, here we are, I suppose. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are watching this from your own little wolf dens. Second monitor, the voice on the voice in the other ear, don't leave that space just yet. What you're doing there is, at its best, older and more dignified than any outsider could ever understand. Just make sure that in the end, it's not the place that you actually live in. Thank you for your time.
Left of you, stone cracked by silence cutting through. Walls whisper names none had spoken. Cities you build now lie broken. Stars into birth, now kneel to glass denying worth. You who stood where gods once bled, now rock your young with lies to bed. I saw your fire choked by doubt, your joy drowned in the hollow shout, your courage sold for fleeting peace. You have forgotten, but I still love you. Not yet. I found your spark in forgotten corners, heard your name in the cry of a child, held your oath in time's retreat, where silence and the endless meet, while courage breathes and children dream, while pain still hides beneath the seam of wounds unnamed and truths ignored. I wait, I watch, I guard the cord in every small and sacred trace, in all things. If you seek my face, if you ask, I will be there in every place. I return not to command, but to walk beside, hand in hand, not to rule, but to see and bear witness to what still must come to be. Rise, you who remember skies. Rise, you who dare to feel too much. Let sorrow lift you. Let your name ring true. Will you come though your hands are torn? Will you walk though your strength is worn? Will you build not because it is easy but because you must? Then come, not perfect but burning, not certain but willing. Come with wounds that remain. Come with wounds that remain. Come with love that counts the strain. Come with blood that dares recall the name you never lost at all. I do not come to reign, I come to call again. open and I call you. You who wake, you who broke, you who search, you who still believe. To dare the finding is to start the flame, to rise anew and bear your name. So rise as conquerors, as keepers true. Rise, not for vengeance, but the vow you knew. Rise, because the world forgot its name and must recall it through your flame. As conquerors, as keepers true. Not for vengeance, but the vow you knew. Because the world forgot its name and must recall it through your